Now on Insight, we hear from two of Mississippi's leading political analysts, Barbour and Brandon Jones, as Donald J. Trump prepares for a second term as president. Republicans savor November's congressional victories, Democrats delve into soul-searching, and state lawmakers prepare for their next trip to Jackson and the 2025 session. A lot to talk about this week on Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thanks for joining us for this December 7th edition of Insight. We're heading into 2025 with great expectations for a wild year in American politics. And there has hardly been a slowdown in big political headlines since the general election campaign. President-elect Donald Trump is already shaking things up with his cabinet picks. Congressional Republicans are doing fresh math after winning both chambers by razor-thin margins. And now the inevitable mix of party politics and national policy will keep us riveted well before a new administration is in place. With so much to discuss, we're lucky once again to talk this week with two veteran Mississippi political strategists. Brandon Jones is a political campaign director at the Southern Poverty Law Center and a former state lawmaker. And Barbour is a longtime political strategist with the consulting firm, the Clearwater Group. Austin, let's begin with you. What are the key challenges and opportunities for Trump in his second term?
Well, I'll start with the opportunities first. He believes that he won with a mandate. I think most Americans believe that he won with a mandate and want him to run with that. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College. That's the first time that has happened in a long time for a Republican. You know, the issue is going to be is the House of Representatives is going to be controlled, at least for some time period, with only a one-seat majority. And Brandon knows legislative politics better than anybody. It's tough to get things done with a one-seat majority. What has happened is Trump has appointed several current House members to fill out his cabinet. So I think he can get a lot of things done. He wants to focus on the border. He wants to focus on taxes. He wants to focus on regulations, getting rid of regulations. And I think he can get those things done. He's just got to realize how close and how tight it's going to be with Congress on anything that's deemed somewhat controversial.
Brandon, what do you see as Trump's challenges and opportunities?
Well, I think for folks who feel the way that I do, we see them in terms of policy threats. You know, you heard Austin a moment ago. He's right. First time for a Republican presidential candidate to win the popular vote since 2004. All the 7 swing states that we were watching closely last month, he won them. And so that's not insignificant. And then, of course, we'll have the trifecta for the first time since 2017. But, you know, if we take him at his word, there's a lot of concerning things on the horizon. What does it look like if you get rid of the Department of Education? What are the practicality and implications of mass deportations? What does it look like if you take aim at Title VI, Title VII, fair housing, Medicaid, health care? And so it's going to be kind of a perilous time for those of us that are concerned about the social safety net, that are concerned about the way policing works in the country, things of that nature. But Austin also brought to mind what the real politic is here. And the truth is, even though Republicans have the Senate and they have the House, the working margin in the House is going to be 217 to 215. And so that means if one person's gone, or if one person doesn't agree with what's coming up in the House that day, then Republicans lose effectively their majority for that day. So it's going to require members of Congress to come together on some of these things, which is almost always the case in American government. We did see many years of Donald Trump's first term kind of stagnant. Nothing got done, nothing got passed. And so what'll be required of this new Congress is to find a way to work together. Otherwise, we could be sitting in the same place.
Yeah, and I will just very quickly follow up, say that Republicans who are elected to both the House and the Senate realize this man was elected, we think, for 2 big reasons. One is to fix our economy, add more jobs, add more investment, fix our jobs and economy, get that going back where it should be, and then fix the border. The border was such a problem, under the Biden administration, and I think the Republicans in Congress, no matter what the majority is or isn't, they're gonna rally around him on those 2 big issues.
Republicans will control, as you mentioned, both chambers of Congress, but with very slim margins we just talked about. How will that impact the president's agenda with these, we talk about these other strategies besides the border and the economy? How is it going to impact him on the other issues that he might try to get done? Because he really has about 18 months before we get to the midterms. Is that what you guys would agree with, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a short window. You have You said 18 months. I think that's right. Technically, you have 2 years, and it's always difficult for Republicans, for the party in control of the White House during that first midterm election. But he's going to have to just go battle this. He's going to have to use his bully pulpit. He's going to have to work with John Thune, who has taken over for Mitch McConnell as the majority leader in the Senate. He's going to have to work with the Speaker of the House and spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill, or have those members spend a lot of time at the White House to say, hey guys, I won the popular vote and the Electoral College. Follow me. I'll get the country back going in the right position, the right place, and I'll get you guys in a good position to win and hold both the House and the Senate in 2026. That's what he's got to go do. And he's a salesman. That's what he's best at.
Brandon, how do you see it for the next 18 to 2 years?
Yeah, well, look, this was the president of chaos the first time around, and judging by who he wants to put on his cabinet, it's going to be chaotic again. You couple that with a newcomer leading the Republican majority in the Senate and a relative newcomer, Mike Johnson, in the House. And so these are folks who are all fairly new to their roles, and a president who has not really shown a lot of keen interest in policy making. He's good at the flourishes on the campaign trail, but not necessarily getting things done. I mean, let's look at his first term. It was not a term of things happening. I don't want to relitigate the past election. The voters have spoken, but illegal migration went down during the last 4 years. The economy, when you compare it to other world economies that were experiencing the same issues of inflation and other things, we were comparatively performing better. And so what Donald Trump has told us is that he wants to institute tariffs. Well, that's something he could do in some part through his own administrative action. I don't know that that's going to mean a lot of improvement. And so we'll just have to see. I mean, what we saw the last time was pretty chaotic. It was kind of a new issue each day. We were promised, as you may recall, an infrastructure bill for 4 years that never happened. We kept hearing about a health care program that never arrived. Frankly, from my vantage point, that's all fine. I would prefer that this president not reshape our health care system. I would prefer that he not put his fingerprint on our economy. But if he's going to do that, he's going to have to exemplify discipline and an ability to work with people that so far we have not seen him use that tool from his tool bag.
Austin, we saw Republican senators begin to assert their independence as Trump began nominating cabinet members such as Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth. Do you too expect more of the same from the Senate and Congress in general as we get through the first couple of years here?
Well, I think, look, it's the Senate's right as part of the Constitution to approve the president's appointments or not approve the president's appointments to the cabinet. I mean, Matt Gaetz didn't make it through that process, not because he got turned down in a committee room. He didn't make it through the process because of what the press how the press approached him, looking into his background. And then obviously, as you both know, there were lots of conversations that he went and had on Capitol Hill with senators, and they just deemed that he's probably not the right fit. The president looked up and said he doesn't have the votes, he's probably not the right fit. And look, it turned out to be great. Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, well liked by conservatives, by Republicans throughout the party. I think she'll be a fantastic Attorney General. We'll see what happens with the Secretary of Defense appointment. We'll see how far that goes. I have no idea. And then you'll have the other one would be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. To see where he ultimately lands. But this is the Senate's. This is their job. It's their job to go through and look at who the cabinet appointments are and whether they want to confirm them or not. It is in the Constitution. It's their right, and I'm glad they're taking it serious.
How do you see the Senate asserting their independence in Congress from the president?
Well, Austin sized it up right. This is their role. This is part of what they do. There are only a few moments when the Senate really gets to flex its muscles in a way that captures the imagination of the public and where they have these figures that they're approving or disapproving. And so it'll be a true first test of Senator Thune and how he intends to lead. I'm sure that he was shaking his head as some of these nominations came out. I'm sure he has already burned up the phone lines calling down to Florida saying, could you please send us folks that we can get past the majority. Some of these folks aren't even making it to the initial interview phase. So this will be its chance for them to figure out how they're going to move forward, how they're going to handle things. And there probably will be at least one or two spaces. That's typically what happens. The new leadership will pick one or two opportunities where they will assert their own independence and prove to the White House that, hey, we've got our own job to do here. We're not a blank check. And I hope they do, and we'll see what that looks like.
Go ahead, Austin.
I apologize. Doug Burgum, who's the former governor, I believe, of North Dakota, who's been appointed to Interior, Marco Rubio, who everybody in America pretty much knows who Marco Rubio is, the head of the Secretary of State. These are a lot of appointments that Republicans and independents, and I think even Democrats, are saying, good choice, great choice, feel very, very confident in who you're picking right there. They're all, anything Donald Trump does, the press tends to want to make a big deal out of. But every president who gets elected, there are always going to be some shots fired at who they initially put up for cabinet positions. So this is not a strange thing. And again, as Brandon just said, it's the Senate's job, it's John Thune's job to lead the Senate through who do we want to confirm or who do we want to not confirm.
Brandon, how do you think Democratic lawmakers will play the cards that they've been dealt in the year ahead?
Yeah, well, look, this is always a challenge when you're part of the minority, but a close minority, to figure out how to navigate. At what point do you work together? Where do you draw a line? So it's a similar calculus. You just don't control the agenda. And so I'm sure Hakeem Jeffries will be trying to pick his spots, figure out where are the places where we can muster the votes. He proved to be pretty effective at that during the early days of the Johnson speakership. So I'm sure he'll be looking for those opportunities on the policy front. The Democratic Senate leadership is shuffling the deck a little bit too. There'll be some new faces that are getting elevated, some new names. So in much the same way that Senate majority will be doing, they'll be trying to feel things out. Where can we work together? Where can we work together to maybe torpedo the White House's ideas? And it'll be fascinating. I wish it was fascinating from the perspective of other people in these jobs, but it'll be an interesting time, as it always is when we have new leadership.
Austin, how do you see Democrats in their role moving forward?
Well, I mean, they'll try to block as best as they possibly can. I'm sure there'll be some issues that they want to work on from a bipartisan standpoint. But look, that's always the position of the minority party. Try to kill what you just adamantly oppose and don't like, and then you try to get on board with some things that you think are good for the country. Republicans have been in those shoes many times, trust me.
How does the second Trump administration impact the state of Mississippi, Austin?
Well, look, I think it does really well. Mississippi has voted overwhelmingly for the president. He's got some very close friends here. Governor Reeves supported him extremely hard. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, she was on the short list to be agriculture secretary. I think she ultimately wanted to stay in the Senate. I don't blame her. Being in the U.S. Senate, it's a pretty cool thing. And I think as a Mississippian, I'm glad that she's gonna continue to stay in the Senate for a long term. But he's got a lot of friends here who are very close to him. And when it comes time to needing to lean on our president for natural disasters, for whatever support, policy, or financial support Mississippi needs, Donald Trump will pick up the phone when our guys call him.
How do you see the Mississippi impact from Donald Trump's administration?
Yeah, I'm sure Republican politicians are excited, as Austin says, but from a kitchen table standpoint, I'm concerned. I mean, there are thousands of Mississippians who rely on social safety net programs to make it through. And if the Trump tax program is implemented, we could see cuts to essential programs like SNAP, like TANF, like Medicaid. And if that were to happen, it would have a tremendous impact on not only people's ability to buy groceries, but people's ability to have health care. We're one of the few states that haven't expanded Medicaid. What's that program going to look like? How is that going to be changed? What might this new Department of Health Human Services look like under a Trump administration? And what could that mean to people currently on the program? What could it mean to people trying to get access to the program? And so, we can scoff at those things, but we are a state that has thousands and thousands of people in each community that can hear our words today, that rely on those programs. So if those programs are cut or jeopardized in any way, it would have a real, true impact in the state.
Yeah, let's turn things over to the legislature now. What are the key priorities likely to dominate the 2025 session? Also, what do you see coming into the session this year?
I think there are four big ones that will suck up most of the oxygen in no particular order. There's going to be a massive debate about taxes, about cutting taxes, particularly the personal income tax. Will there be what we call a tax swap? We're going to cut here, we're going to raise here. There'll be a deep conversation and debate about school choice, how to expand school choice. Medicaid expansion is not going anywhere. I do anticipate that it will come back very quickly. And then, the other one, you could obviously PERS, and then the ballot initiative. The ballot initiative was passed by the House last year, got close in the Senate. I feel pretty confident the ballot initiative will also be an active issue that will be debated again this session, plus dozens of other ones. But I think those are the big 4 or 5 that I think even Brandon would agree with me on.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's a very close list. Democrats in the House and Senate will prioritize Medicaid expansion. That's been top priority for many years now. They'll carry that. And look, there's a promise of getting something done. It came very close last year. I think that'll be job one. You heard Austin mention the ballot initiative. No question, that'll be on top of mind, and see if they can get some traction there. We mentioned taxes. Cutting the grocery tax has been a long-standing Democratic priority. That's one of those regressive taxes that we lead the country in. Believe it or not, Mississippians pay more for their groceries in terms of taxes than any other place in the country. That's out of sync with our economy, and it's out of sync with the needs of everyday Mississippians. So I think you'll see Democrats really emphasize cutting the grocery tax. One thing I didn't hear Austin mention that we will hear about pretty quickly is judicial redistricting. There are some lawsuits because Mississippi hasn't taken on judicial redistricting in 3 decades. And so there's no question that lawmakers will have to tackle that.
Yeah, judicial redistricting, Brandon's right. It's such an inside baseball conversation that begins at the county courthouse and ends its way up into the obviously the Capitol building in Jackson. Most Mississippians have no idea what judicial redistricting is. I guess until they're in a courtroom, then they figured out pretty quickly. But yeah, Brandon's right. It was debated last year. There was almost an agreement that happened, but I'm pretty sure that will get done. I think it has to get done, Brandon, this session.
And when you talk about judicial redistricting, what does that look like, and what kind of changes are we likely to see? Yeah,
so what we're referring to are those districts where we get our members of the Court of Appeals and our members of the Supreme Court. And whereas other political districts and subdivisions throughout the state have been redistricted in accordance with census results, those have not been looked at in a long time. So what we're talking about is the same thing we do when we talk about drawing other lines. Are they apportioned correctly based on the census? Does it keep insular and close-held communities together? Does it respect one person, one vote? All the constitutional requirements of redistricting. And Austin's right. I mean, there's a lawsuit and perhaps others that are pending. This is one of those things where legislatures have learned in Louisiana and Alabama, you either do it or the court will do it for you. And so in many of those cases, those legislatures, at least I know in our neighboring states, were not happy with what the court did. And so what the Mississippi legislature is going to have to decide is, are we going to take the initiative, figure this thing out, or are we going to let some federal judge tell us how it's going to be figured out?
We'll go back to tax reform. When you're talking about tax reform, is it likely that we'll see an income tax eliminated this session, or where's that going to stand?
What I can tell you, it is very likely you will see that debated. We're going to have Trey Lamar and Josh Harkins. Trey Lamar is the chairman of Ways and Means in the House. Josh Harkins, who's the chairman of finance in the Senate. Those two will lead the negotiations in both of those chambers. I know Chairman Lamar has been working on a bill for a long time, ever since the session of 24 ended, to approach his chamber with. I think something will be done, but it's their goal, yes, I think both of their goals is to try to eliminate or further cut our personal income taxes. And, they've got to figure out what do they want to do to try to make sure MDOT is, fully funded. That's always been a problem. Brad White, the executive director of MDOT, all three commissioners have spent a lot of time in the Capitol talking to legislative leaders about, listen, we've got to have more consistent, steady funding to make sure that we are not only paving the roads that we have, but we can expand them in places like DeSoto County, Madison County, Harrison County, where we have tremendous growth. And then, of course, there are other priorities that we need to focus on. And as Brandon said, the grocery tax, which is the sales tax paid when you go buy groceries, all lawmakers want to try to do something about that. It is going to be a massive bill, probably going to be complicated. When you do something like this, there's kind of no way to do it easy. Trey and Josh may prove me wrong on that, and I hope they do. But it'll be a widely debated topic this legislative session.
And when you talk about the income tax, a lot of people, the debate about that, and those who are against it, is the fact that how do you replace that income? So where does that stand on that issue?
Yeah, we've struggled with that. There's not been a good answer offered so far. And this is one of those things where you get what you pay for. So if you want your government to provide state roads, if you want them to provide public schools, if you want them to provide libraries, if group of folks are those who rely on our public school system in the state of Mississippi. And the public school system is going to be fighting off enemies from a lot of different sides, it looks like, this session. And so do we want to have public schools? Do we want them to be good? Do we want hospitals? Do we want them to be able to take you? Do you want mama to have a hospital bed? Those are the types of questions that are really here. It sounds great. To me, it's just saccharine, sugar sweet to say, Byron, we're going to cut your taxes. But then whenever your cart's in a ditch and you need a road or you need one of these other services, how are we going to fund that? And look, that's just been an answer that Mississippi has struggled with. Right now, we're kind of living off of the glut of federal dollars that came to us through COVID. There's no promise that that is going to be renewed. There's no promise that our economy will ever be in the shape that it was in after those federal dollars came here. And so the notion of doing this at a time when our economic heights have really been dictated by money we've received from the feds, I think it's bad economic policy.
Mississippi Democrats don't have very much to show for their efforts in recent years. What does this party need to do to shore up the party in the state of Mississippi?
Well, look, I think there's a variety of ways to look at it. Mississippi has been a Republican majority state for a long time, ruby red, as some people think, but we've seen that change. We've had 3 elections over the last several cycles that have been within 5 points. We saw a gubernatorial race just a little over a year ago that was within 3 points. And so we're seeing increasing tightening. We're seeing more competition. We're seeing demographic shifts within the state. So we're seeing more and more close elections, and we're seeing, leadership within the Democratic Party. Look, Derek Simmons, Senate Democratic leader, Robert Johnson, House Democratic leader, are some of the best state legislators you will find anywhere in the state. And they've done an excellent job of marshaling resources, working together when they can, and stopping things when they've been able to. And I think you'll see them continue to grow their caucuses. And I think, from a political standpoint, I think it's getting close. I mean, I understand people say, well, where are the wins? But these races have been exceptionally close. And I think they're going to continue to do that. And I think we're only a few cycles away from some change.
Austin, do you agree with that?
Well, I agree with some of that. I mean, look, obviously the elections are getting closer as the dynamics of the population in Mississippi change. And I do like Robert Johnson. I do like Derek Simmons. I think Brandon is right. They're both really good guys doing the best they can. But for Democrats, I mean, you got to be able to raise money from Mississippians. That's been their biggest problem. When Mike Espy ran and when Brandon Presley ran, they were funded. The vast majority of their dollars came from their national associations. And that's been the biggest problem for Dems to ultimately find success here is having the donor pool from people who want to give $1 or want to give a whole lot more than $1. But listen, it all comes back down to policies and how you implement these policies and how you affect the state. And Brandon's my friend, but he has a different belief than I do on taxes. I believe that, yes, we can cut taxes and make sure we're taking care of what the state should do, from roads to healthcare to education. And I think we can do all of these things at the same time. And that's why we have legislators and a governor and lieutenant governor that we elect so that they can go and lead on these issues. And then we'll see ultimately what happens. But I think we can do all of this stuff. Listen, if I'm having less money to pay in taxes, there are more things that I can go buy. When I go buy those things, then I'll have to pay sales tax. Those dollars hopefully will continue to come into the state, but we got to be responsible with how we do it. And that's why we have adults like Jason White and Delbert Hoseman at the Capitol and Tate Reeves, who will make sure that what they believe should be done for the best of all Mississippians will be done. And then when we have another election in 27, voters will decide who did a good job and who didn't.
Austin and Brandon, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll be right back.
You can find Mississippi Insight each weekend. We podcast the program each Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and more. Search for 12 News on Demand or Mississippi Insight for the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. Only on 12 News.
Our thanks to Brandon Jones and Austin Barbour for joining us. We'll be back next week with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.